All right, let's take a look at Wheelock chapter 9. Here we learn about demonstrative words. These can function as pronouns or as adjectives. We'll see that here in a little bit. And also special adjectives that have a genitive singular that end with ius. Ius. So let's get on with it. First of all, we want to talk about demonstrative words and how they are formed in Latin. In English, as well as in other languages, there are words that point out other people or things, and they have reference to the proximity, the closeness to the speaker. We call these words demonstratives. That's derived from demonstrare, to point out in Latin. So these are pointing words. In English, our near demonstratives are this and these. That's the singular and plural. And the far demonstratives are that and those. So when you think about it, if I'm speaking about something that is close to me, then I will refer to it as this pencil here that I have. And if I want to talk about something that's more remote or farther away from me, I would not say this pencil over there, but that pencil over there. So distance is the idea here in terms of pointing. Now, the forms of the Latin demonstratives are point number 2. Generally, demonstratives in Latin will follow the pattern of normal 2, 1, 2 adjectives like magnus, magnum, magnum, right? So these end with second declension case endings if they're masculine, first declension if feminine, and a second declension if neuter. So these are familiar, we hope. But in a handful of places, the demonstratives depart from the normal pattern of case endings, and I've shaded them below to draw attention to them on the chart. And what I've also done, just to help you, in case you're still working on memorizing your case endings, or at least if you don't have the ability to visualize them in your head, I want you to see the case endings that are normally 2, 1, 2, and how they demonstrate where the demonstrative departs from those case endings. And so let's start with the near demonstrative, hic, meaning this or these. And I'll just point out here before we see them, because you will notice that there are some forms with a final C here. And this is due to a demonstrative enclitic form ke that was added sometimes. And then the final E of ke drops off, and so you will just see a final C here, okay? In your mind, you kind of need to remove that C to be able to see what some of the real forms might have been, and I'll point that out here in just a moment, okay? So let me have you repeat after me. So we'll read across all the nominative forms and all the genitive, just so you can get a feel for the pattern here. So, hic, hike, hook, right, for this nominative thing here. And notice that my case endings, there's not a match here at all. And so that's why these are highlighted. And one of the things that I encourage my students to do is when they're learning adjectives, and in this case, pronouns, you want to memorize the nominative forms of all the genders. Remember to do that. As you're memorizing them as a lexical form, memorize all the nominative forms in all the genders. So hic, hike, hook should be what you constantly tell yourself when you're remembering what the word this is in Latin. Okay, now with the genitive singular form, this ui is a diphthong. And it's ui. Remember that ui. So this is huius, huius, huius. Thankfully, these are all identical to each other. So you only have to learn one form for the genitive singular of all the genders. Again, it's highlighted because it's distinct from your typical genitive singular case endings, e, I, and e. All right? So these are ones you're going to have to really commit to your mind. Thankfully, you're only committing one to your mind. So if this is your lexical form, right, then you should just know that because you've memorized the lexical form. And then you're just memorizing one form for the genitive. For dative, everybody, huik, huik, huik. All right. So here's that ke enclitic that's been added, but the e's dropped off. And the dative case endings here are o, I, o. Again, no correspondence here, so you have this highlighted. Accusative, honk, honk, hook. All right, and again, we have Now, I've only highlighted this neuter form, and I want to point out what I say here down at the bottom. The forms hunk and honk, accusative masculine singular and feminine singular, are really normal here. You may look at that and go, that doesn't look normal. Okay, but trust me, these are normal. Should have been hum and hum. Remember our normal case endings, and here. We should have had hum and hum, but the final k was added. And when that happened, I have something that's difficult to pronounce. Hum followed by a C or hum followed by a C creates a difficult combination. Humk, right? So what happens is this M assimilates and becomes an N, because an N is also nasal, like an M is nasal. M and N are nasal sounds. But I'm producing or going to a nasal sound that's easier to pronounce when followed by C. So humk becomes hunk, 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 okay? Humk becomes honk, honk. Notice that what's happening there is your tongue is already raising up in the middle region of the roof of the mouth with the N to get to the C sound, the k sound as well. All right, so in effect, these are the same, and you have to remember two things, of course. The C's been added, and then the M has assimilated to become an N before that C. Now with hoke, that is not like the neuter accusative singular case ending. So that's why this is shaded here. All right, so really this is very shady business. We have a lot of the singular forms, but not all of them are irregular. Okay, ablative. Hoke, hock, hoke. And here, this is normal. Notice it's not shaded. My ablative case endings are O, A, O. You may say, yeah, but there's no C on these. Right, because we've added the C as a demonstrative enclitic in these. But when you mentally remove the C, what do you have? You have ho, ha, ho, which matches O, A, O here. All right, so that's why I said sometimes you need to mentally remove that C to see the case endings. All right, plural. He, hi, hike. Okay, and our normal case endings, E, I, and ah, the first two match. The last one's unusual, right? There's no final A here, so hike. You got to remember that one. So that's these, nominative plural. Genitive of these, horum, harum, horum. All right, match. Orum, arum, orum here. Love that. Dative. Oh, by the way, that would be of these, right? Dative plural, to these. His, his, his. Ah, nice. All the same. And they're all the same because the case endings are the same. Is, is. So that's great. Accusative. Hos, has, hike. Again, the masculine and feminine match, os and as, but neuter does not have the final A, hike. And then that's these as like an object. I love these. And then ablative. His, his. Again, is are my forms in normal case endings as well. So there's a match here. So what are some things if we step back and look? What are some things that we see? Well, as I mentioned, you should always learn the three genders of pronouns and adjectives when you learn the lexical form. And if you do, the neuter will be hoke. And then what's always true about neuters is that the nominative and the accusative match each other. So once you know the nominative neuter one, you know the accusative one. So in effect, that removes the strain here in remembering. The thing you have to remember is that neuter forms the same in that accusative singular. And then really that just leaves you, once you've got your lexical form memorized, just these two forms here, okay? Now, and then on the plural side, it's true again, neuter, nominative, neuter, accusative are the same form. So once you have that form memorized, you've got the accusative one memorized, and then everything else is normal here, all right? So it may seem complicated at first, but it's not as bad as you think. All right, so let's move on to the far demonstratives. So ille can be translated that, those, and iste, so that or those near you. So both of these sets are far demonstratives with reference to the speaker, right? If something's close to the speaker, we use near demonstratives. If it's not close to the speaker, it's more remote, we use far. But there's a distinction among the far demonstratives, all right? And those have to do with whether the thing that we're talking about pertains to the addressee. If so, we use iste. And remember, the addressee is you. I'm the speaker, you're the addressee, you, second person. So if something's remote to me but nearer to you, I'll use iste for that. So you can translate that as sometimes that of yours or that pertaining to you. And ille is used for something remote to the speaker, but also remote from the addressee. So anyone who's not an I or a you is third person, and so that thing is remote to us. Okay, so let's look at the forms. We'll start with ille. Okay, ille. So again, you can repeat after me. Ille, illa, illud. All right. Now, notice that the masculine and neuters are shaded because they do not match us and Okay. Illa does match the feminine, so that's good. So again, if you memorize all three of these for your lexical form, you've got most of this, okay? Genitive, Elias, Elias, Elias. All right. Notice that doesn't look a thing like our genitive singulars over here, E-I-E. So, all shaded. This, of course, though, is going to be used in our special adjective section. So, even though they're a bit unusual here, we'll find them in some very common forms. Dative, illy, illy, illy. All right, so notice that these are quite different from our dative singular 212 case endings. But what they are like is the genitive case endings in third declension. Excuse me, they are like the dative case endings in third declension. So we do actually have something familiar here. All right, accusative. Illum, illam, illud. All right, so there, illum and illam match. The D here is what's unusual. We would have expected an M for neuter here, right? But again, notice that my neuter, nominative, neuter, accusative match. And then ablative. Illo, illa, illo. And then case endings O, A, O, we have a match. So again, it's not too hard if you remember neuters match masculine or nominative and accusative. And then if you've memorized all three of these for your lexical form, you'll have those. And then it's really just remembering these two little nasty monsters there. Okay, let's look at the plural forms, everybody. Illi, illai, illa. E-I-A, E-I-A. Wonderful. Actually, the whole plural forms set match our typical case endings. So there's nothing unusual here. You just have to remember I-L-L is the base, and we're adding the case endings to that, which we've already learned from the top part. So illorum, ilarum, illorum. Illis, illis, illis. Okay, perfect matches here. We love it. Accusative plural, illos, illas, illa. Same thing here, right? And again, neuters match there. And then illis, illis, illis for ablative plural. If you recall, ablatives and datives in the plural will look like each other too. And so you've got your matching forms here as well. Okay? We saw that as well up here with his and his, right? There, those look the same. All right. And then with iste. Iste is the same as ille, except we replace il with ist. All right? And that's it. The endings are the same. They match each other in every way. Just il versus ist. So let's read these. Iste, ista, istud. Okay, so and de, those do not match us and They're highlighted, but the a certainly is the same. Istius, istius, istius. Okay, e, I, e are my normal case endings in genitive singular. No match here, but they are the same as Elias's forms. Isti, isti, isti. Okay, again, O, I, O are dative singular, no match here, but this does follow the case endings for third declension dative singulars. And then almost everything's regular after this except for that neuter singular form. Istum, istam, istud. Okay, but not ud, but So there that D does not match. Okay, but it does follow identically the same form as the nominative neuter. So, good news there. And then ablative. Isto, ista, isto. O, perfect match. And then all the plural ones are the same. So we don't need to read through these, but you can see I've given them to you here for completeness, even though Wheelock doesn't provide those for you. Alrighty. Let's look down now here at the functions. Okay, so the function of demonstrative words. Demonstratives can function in one of two ways. They can function as pronouns or as adjectives. We want to focus on the pronoun function of demonstratives here. When a demonstrative functions as a pronoun, then there is no noun that accompanies it and agrees with it in case, gender, and number. To put it another way, because the demonstrative doesn't have a noun to modify, the demonstrative is functioning like a noun. In effect, then, this is like the substantival adjectives that we've seen. Okay, pronouns traditionally are described as words that stand for nouns, and that certainly makes sense here. If the pronoun is taking the place of a noun, then it's it's doing what pronouns typically do. Just give you some examples in English here to make the point. Our English demonstrative this is used in the first sentence. This really stinks. Notice this is the subject. Stinks is the verb. There is no noun that goes with this demonstrative word, right? So this is a pronoun, and I'll just use pro here to abbreviate pronoun. This is a pronoun use of the demonstrative. I'm not saying this cat really stinks, where I add a noun, right? The pronoun hangs by itself. It's functioning like a noun. And the subject role is what this noun or pronoun has. In the second sentence, I love those. Here, this pronoun occurs by itself, i.e. without a noun that it modifies, and it's functioning in a noun role. I love those means I love those, direct object things. Okay, but these are unattractive. Here's another demonstrative functioning as a pronoun. It's taking the noun function of the subject here. These are attractive. So when demonstratives function as pronouns, they're going to have case, gender, and number. And this is really important. Their gender and number are determined by their referent or the antecedent. What do they stand for? So when I say I love those, I have to make a gender number choice in Latin. What does those refer to? If it's a masculine plural noun, then I'm going to use a masculine plural form of those. Okay, so the gender and number is always determined by what their referent or antecedent is, what they stand for. The case of a demonstrative pronoun is determined by its grammatical function in the clause. So if the pronoun is the subject, that's its grammatical function, it will be nominative case. If the pronoun is the direct object, that's its function, it will be accusative case. But its gender and number has nothing to do with what its function is. It has to do with what it represents or stands for. So, when translating a demonstrative pronoun, sometimes it will be useful in English to add an additional word to clarify the gender and number of the pronoun, since in English, our demonstrative words are not marked for gender. When I say this is genderless. Now, there may be an inherent gender that the this has, but we don't mark gender on the actual form in English, okay? I don't say this-o and this-a, like, you might expect in say, a Latin-based language. So, here's a couple of examples. So, I have hoc est corpus meum. This is a famous expression in Christian theology. So notice that hoc here is a particular demonstrative word choice. What can we say about its parsing? It is nominative, it is neuter, and it's singular, right? And it is functioning as a pronoun. Why is it nominative singular? The reason it is because, remember, gender and number are determined by the referent or the antecedent. Corpus is neuter singular, right? And that's what this refers to. This is my corpus. This is my body. So when I refer to this, and I'm pointing to my body, for example, or to something that represents my body, I'm pointing to something neuter singular. That's why I'm using the neuter singular form. Why is it nominative? Because it's the subject of this verb est. And subjects are nominative case, i.e. the function of the demonstrative pronoun is determined by, the case of the demonstrative pronoun is determined by the function. All right? Over here on the right, I have hic est pater meus amo hung. Okay? So here I have pronoun, demonstrative use, but no noun that it modifies, so it's not a demonstrative adjective. Okay? And then it's nominative, masculine singular here. It's accusative, masculine singular here. Now, why is it masculine singular, hic? Well, it's because pater is masculine singular, and when I say this is my father, the this to which I'm referring is a masculine singular entity. That determines the gender and number. Why is it nominative? Because this is functioning as the subject of the verb est. Okay, so case is determined by function. So this is my father. Now, I could say this is my father, and that sounds perfectly good because I would likely say it in a situation where I can wave at my father or point at my father when I say that. But look at the second sentence. Amo honk. I love this. This is the direct object, and that determines its accusative function, case function, right? It's still masculine singular because I'm still referring to the father here. That determines its gender and number. But can I say in English, I love this, and be referring to a man like that? It sounds awkward, right? Because when I say I love this, it sounds like I'm saying I love this thing. And this is a situation where adding the extra word in English will be meaningful. I love this man. I love this one. I love this dude. Okay? Although in Latin I could just say amo honk and use the accusative masculine singular to indicate that it's a masculine singular entity that I love. So these were all using near demonstratives. We'll get a few far ones here in our examples next. All right, 2.2, the adjective function of demonstratives. Demonstrative words can function also as a kind of attributive adjective. And when the demonstrative functions as an adjective, there will be an overt noun that it accompanies, and as with regular attributives, they have to agree with their noun in three ways: case, gender, and number. Typically, demonstrative adjectives precede the noun. So, in English, that's true, right? This foot really stinks. Using the examples that I had up here a little while ago, this really stinks compared to this foot really stinks. Notice that I have the demonstrative and I have a noun that it is modifying directly. This is a demonstrative adjective, all right? And then if I say, I love those toes, but these toes are unattractive. My other sentence was, I love those, but these are unattractive. There, the demonstrative functioned as a pronoun. Here, it functions as an adjective, doesn't it? Because it's modifying toes here in our example. Those toes, these toes, rather than I love those, and these are unattractive. So, here we have a couple of Latin examples. Hoc corpus est meum. Hoc corpus. So notice, the demonstrative is immediately followed by a noun, and these both agree in case, gender, number. These are nominative, neuter, singular, right? So why are they both nominative, neuter, and singular? Because the demonstrative is an adjective modifying corpus here. Now, what's going to determine the case, gender, number of the demonstrative adjective, you don't have to think hard about it. It's just whatever the noun is that it's modifying. So the noun's case will be based on its function, but the demonstrative adjective just always follows the noun's case and gender and number. All right, so hoc corpus est meum means this body is mine. This body. Which body? This body. All right. Now, I've modified my sentence from above here also to make these demonstrative adjectives. So, hic pater amat hunc filium. All right. So, here's my demonstrative word. And it's followed by the noun pater. Which father? Hic pater. This father. Notice then that pater is the subject of amat, and that's why it's nominative, and hic has to match it. This is the nominative masculine singular form, matching pater's nominative masculine singular form. And then my direct object here, filium, is preceded by a demonstrative, and it's functioning how? This is an adjective, just like the demonstrative hic is an adjective here. Hunc filium. Which son does this father love? Hunc filium, this son. And it's accusative because it's matching the accusative direct object filium. Okay. Now, those are near demonstratives. Here's some far ones. Video istud corpus. I see that body, where I'm using the iste form, but in the that's neuter singular, right? What is the case of istud corpus? Right, I is the subject, and my verb here is taking a direct object, and so this demonstrative is a far demonstrative, and it is accusative, even though it could have been nominative, because neuters are the same, nominative and accusative. So video istud corpus, I see that body, which is pertaining to you. I see that body of yours. Over here on the right side, I have illa mater amat illam filiam. It basically is like this, except I've switched it to a far demonstrative and to a girl set of women instead of men. All right, so that mother, my demonstrative here is followed by a noun, and so this is the adjective use, right? That mother, and it matches the case of mother, nominative feminine singular, illa mater. And then illam filiam is a demonstrative followed by a noun. This demonstrative matches in case, gender, number, so its function is the adjective function. Which daughter? That daughter. All right. And by the way, it is now no longer nominative, but accusative feminine singular, whereas this one was nominative feminine singular. Okay, so illa, nominative, illam, accusative. All right, good. Well, last thing we want to talk about here is the special ius adjectives. There are 9 adjectives in Latin that have the genitive singular ius and the dative singular e, and these forms diverge from regular 2-1-2 adjectives and instead follow the pattern of ille, illa, illud that we saw above. Elsewhere in the paradigm, these special ius adjectives are normal, so you should expect your typical case endings following the 2-1-2 pattern, like what we see in magnus, magnum, magnum. The only exception to this regularity is that in addition to differing on the genitive singular, dative singulars, the adjective alius, alia, aliud, another, other, these also vary from the norm in the nominative and accusative neuter singular, where we get aliud instead of alium. Of course, that's reflecting what we saw with ille, illa, illud, so it's not too irregular, but again, it's not following the normal 2-1-2 pattern that we would have expected alium, right? If it were following typical neuter second declension. And the other difference here is that the form borrows. It pulls in from a different adjective its genitive singular forms. Alius goes to alter and says, I want to use you for my genitive singular forms. So my genitive singular will be alterius instead of alius. Okay, this borrowing of a form for part of the paradigm, this is referred to by grammarians as suppletion. All right, and we use suppletion in English. For example, the verb to go. What's the past tense? It's I went, right? I'm actually borrowing a completely different word to fill out the paradigm of my my forms of go. And went comes from the verb to wend, which is an old word that's not used anymore in English. So the paradigms of two of the 9 adjectives are here, and I've given you solus, alone only, and alias, alias because it's got those other irregularities too. But aside from alias's irregularities, the 9 basically follow solus's form. And thankfully, the only difficulties are here in genitive and dative. But if you got your demonstratives down, this won't be too difficult. Okay, so I'll just read these with you. And I've put the normal case endings here just so that you can see the similarities and the differences. Solus, sola, solum, us, all right? But for genitive singular, not e, I, e, but the eus forms. But thankfully, they're all the same. Solius, solius, solius. Okay? And then for dative singular, soli, 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 versus o, I, o. So that's why these are shaded. Everything else is normal. Solum, solam, solum, solo, sola, solo, o, a, o. And then for the plurals, they are all regular. Okay? Now with alius, other or another, I have alius, alia, us, a, match, but neuter aliud. So that's our difference here, not And then here we're switching to the alter form rather than ali. So alterius, alterius, alterius. Again, e, I, e are definitely not reflected here. Alii, 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 as opposed to o, I, o. So dative singular, definitely different. And then for accusative, alium, aliam, aliud, similar with and here, but not the D of neuter. And then alio, alia, alio, and that is reflected in our standard case endings. So this is very nice. By the way, the plurals are all normal, so we don't need to read through those. But so again, I've shaded where there's distinctions here. Okay, now, last thing is just to know which of the 9 adjectives fit this pattern. And this is a really wonderful mnemonic device here. The word unas, or the expression unas nauta, which means one sailor. And recall that nauta is first declension, but it is a masculine first declension. Most of my first declension nouns are feminine. And that's why unas matches the masculine singular nominative form here for the adjective. So this is a good little memory device because it teaches us some grammar too. But here are the forms. If we read unas nauta down with each successive letter of the acrostic, we actually can remember the adjectives. Also, one other thing: these adjectives are all quantitative. They refer to quantity. So you might describe them in linguistics as quantifiers, but they all have something to do with quantity of one sort or another. All right. So unas, una, unum, and the genitive is going to have that ius ending, right? So unius. So that's one. Nullus, nulla, nullum. Genitive singular, nullius. So no or none of something. If I say no boys went, right, I'd use nullus. Ulus, ula, ulum. Genitive singular, ulius, any. Solus, sola, solum. Genitive singular, solius, alone or only. You might have seen the expression in the Reformation, soli Deo gloria, to God alone be glory. Neuter, neutra, neutrum. And our genitive singular, neutrius, neither. Alius, alia, aliud. And our genitive singular, alterius, another or other. Uter, utra, utrum. Genitive singular, utrius, either or which of two. Totus, tota, totum. Genitive singular, totius, a whole or entire. And then alter, altera, alterum. And it's genitive singular, alterius, the other of two. So there's the one, there's the other out of a set of two. Okay, good. So, sorry, this was a long chapter with lots of data thrown at you, but practice reading the charts, and you'll actually get the hang of these demonstratives.